Does Nancy Pelosi have inside information about stocks? And if so, should you just be following her trades? So over the years, there's been many headlines about politicians seeming to have uncanny ability to pick stocks. During 2020, there were several headlines about politicians selling stocks just after getting briefings about how bad the COVID virus might get. There were other headlines about other politicians buying shares in companies that made protective equipment after hearing about how quickly the disease transmitted. Now, to be clear, trading on insider information is just as illegal for members of Congress as it is for you and me, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. If the politicians are cheating, why shouldn't I? Now, in a way, you kinda can. Members of Congress have to report all of their financial transactions within 45 days to a public website. And so you can log in, see what it is that they've been buying, and buy it yourself if you want. There's also a couple ETFs that have been launched that'll just do this for you. One is got the ticker NANC, ostensibly a reference to former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Another has the ticker KRUZ, which I assume is a reference to Texas Senator Ted Cruz. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of inside information members of Congress might get. In the normal course of their jobs, there are some things they might know about budget decisions, maybe regulatory decisions that could give them an edge in picking stocks. For example, they might know when a big contract's about to be awarded to some defense contractor, or maybe when the FDA is about to approve some new drug. But if we look at these ETFs that follow politician trades, don't really see that kind of thing. In the Nancy ETF that I mentioned earlier, it is less than 1% in both defense and biotech stocks. In fact, if we look at the top 5 holdings in the Nancy ETF, they are NVIDIA, Microsoft, Salesforce, Amazon, and Apple. And those are basically the top 5 holdings in the whole S&P 500. So does Congress know something about NVIDIA that the rest of us don't know? I mean, maybe, but congressional action isn't super important for companies like NVIDIA or Microsoft or Apple. The main driver of those stocks isn't stuff like government sales or minor tweaks in regulation. It's really things like AI or other product innovations. I'm not sure Congress knows anything about that stuff more than the rest of us do. Now, many members of Congress are quite wealthy, and like most wealthy people, they have financial advisors. So the congressional transaction reports don't tell us what stock transactions were done by the member themselves versus what might have been selected by some advisor. I mean, not for nothing, those top 5 holdings sure look a lot like the kinds of holdings that financial advisors would typically recommend. Now, of course, it could be that members of Congress are getting inside information outside of their official duties. It would be conceivable for some company looking to curry a little favor, let slip some details about an upcoming earnings report that maybe the recipient could use to make a quick buck on a trade. Now, to be clear, this would definitely be illegal both for the company and for the member of Congress, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. The problem here is that Congress doesn't have to report those transactions for 45 days. So if they were to get a tip about an upcoming earnings report, buy the stock ahead of the report, and then sell it after a pop, by the time you find out about the transaction, that pop has already come and gone. And so it wouldn't be of tremendous use to you as a trader. But this whole thing really falls apart when you look at performance of those 2 ETFs I mentioned. And the Nancy ETF has done slightly better than the market since it was launched last February, whereas the Cruz ETF has actually done quite poorly compared to the market. So first of all, you would think if there was some persistent advantage that people in Congress had over the public, that you'd see it across both of these ETFs. But it gets even worse if you dive into the details. If we look at that Nancy ETF, it has about a 17% position in NVIDIA, which is a stock that's up over 500% since these ETFs were launched. So if we pull out the effect of NVIDIA, the whole advantage the Nancy ETF has had versus the S&P 500 basically goes away. So you'd think, hey man, if Congress has a consistent advantage, it wouldn't just show up in this one stock. We would see it across many of their stock holdings. So look, I'm not saying that every trade Congress makes is fair. What I am saying is there's probably no sense in fixating over what it is they do. Looking at the evidence, there's no persistent advantage in trying to follow their trades. But what do you think? Am I being too easy on these guys? Am I being too harsh on these guys? Put a comment down in the comments section. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I see down there. And if you like this content, we'll be coming at you about once a week with thoughts on the market, on the economy, on the Fed. So hit that subscribe button. You'll be the first to know when we have new content. I'd love to see you again.